Hi, I'm Justin Barrett, president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a former university professor and I am a psychological scientist. I've got the holidays on my mind, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what's a good size table for people to sit at? What's a good size dinner conversation? I know that's not something we normally talk about. Maybe it's a little weird, and I'm going to encourage something that's a little countercultural. I think it's actually okay that there's a kids' table instead of big giant tables. I don't have anything against big giant tables. Let me explain myself though. So one of my former colleagues at Oxford University, Robin Dunbar, is famous for his work, among other things. He's done a lot of stuff. That guy is busy, had a good career. Um, he did work on what are natural social group sizes. And he did this, sort of carved this up in a number of ways, doing lots of different studies in terms of how many relationships we can manage, what are natural conversation sizes. And he and his colleagues, for instance, made the observation, and this really was sort of systematic observation, that natural human conversation groups are really only about 3 or 4 people large. And when they get a bit bigger than that, they actually have to have structure or regulation, or what happens is sub-conversations start splitting off, or somebody dominates and everybody else listens, or other kinds of weird things happen in terms of our natural communication patterns. It seems that we humans naturally gravitate towards a single conversation with 2 or 3 other people. And so then when you are thinking about hosting a big party, a dinner party, maybe it's around the holidays or something like that, you might think about, well, what kind of social interaction do I want to have at my dinner party? When we put everybody at a great big table and we don't have any structure for the interaction, you've symbolized togetherness because there's the big thing. But really, depending on the size of the table and how loud the group is, you've made sure that each person can only talk to a person on either side of them. Maybe the person across the table from them, but probably only the person to the right or to the left. But you've been there, I've been there. What happens? Well, the person to the right of me turns and talks to the person to the right of them. And the person to the left of me turns and talks to the person to the left of them. And I'm left talking to nobody. And that's a very natural thing at a large table, a table of 8, 10, 12 people. That's what's going to happen. That's why those banquets tables, those big round banquet tables of 8 are so awkward, is because you're often left with no conversation partner. And so traditionally, people noticed this. It didn't take sort of contemporary science to notice this, but it meant traditionally when the wealthy people, say in the United Kingdom, were showing off their opulence, their resources, and they're having these fancy dinner parties, and they were these big tables. They actually had rules about who sat where and who you would talk to when. And some of these traditions actually still exist in places like the Oxford and Cambridge University colleges at their high tables. You're supposed to talk to, say, the person on your left during one course of the meal, to the right on the other course, and across at the other course of the meal. And they will sometimes move people from room to room so that there are other opportunities for social interaction. So that maybe there will be pre-dinner drinks in one room, or there will be post-dinner dessert in another room. And that also enables a broader range of smaller scaled conversations, because you can't really have a conversation with everybody who's sitting in your sort of general vicinity at a table. It just doesn't work. If you do want to have a big table, or that's just the table you've got, you might think about actually being a little heavy-handed in your sort of social engineering. You might say, okay, here's sort of our initial opening. I don't know, maybe you're opening your dinner with prayer like a lot of people do. Maybe then there's a conversation topic if you need to engineer, like, hey, share something you're grateful for to the person to your right. Of course, you can't just say the person to your right, because then everybody turns to their right and everybody's looking at the back of somebody else's head. So, think that one through. But you get the idea. Form your little 2s and 3s that are going to share a conversation, that they're going to start talking. And then those conversations shift at different points in the meal. Like maybe during the appetizer course, you've got one set of conversation partners, during the mains, another, and then during the dessert, you've got another set of conversations. It's also traditional that couples were split up. They didn't sit next to each other. In fact, the hosting male and hosting female were usually at opposite ends of the table. They couldn't talk to each other other than nonverbals, and looking like third base coaches and giving signals about what's going on out there. But usually couples didn't sit next to each other, and that was quite deliberate, right? You can easily imagine why. So that then they've got something to talk about later, or gossip about later, if you think less of humans that way. But and my wife and I actually try to do this often when we're at bigger dinners. We're like, look, we don't have to sit next to each other. And so unless we're made to do it, we'll often separate so that then we have different conversations that then we can share with each other. It kind of spreads out our social impact and our social input, if you will. Often, traditionally, tables were also set male, female, male, female, male, female, all the way around, so that a man would have a woman on either side of him, a woman would have a man on either side of her. And that wasn't just to help people sort of mix and mingle and, I don't know, hook up or whatever. That's not what that was about. It could have been sometimes. But mostly, again, it was about getting people to talk to people they wouldn't normally talk to, which enhances our social skills, our conversational skills, learn more about what's going on, and then people would withdraw to the withdrawing room, which we often you hear as just being abbreviated the drawing room, and then it was usually sex segregated. The men would go and smoke their cigars over in that room, and the women would go over into that room. Well, that's not because men and women weren't allowed to mingle. It's because they've already mingled. And now they can go and have these other conversations that they didn't have before in smaller groups. So if you have a dinner party of, say, 4 couples, the couples are sort of separated from each other and they're seating boy, girl around the table during the meal. But then after the meal, now you've got 4 men and 4 women, each in their own spaces, who can have a different kind of conversation. And it's a small enough conversation size to actually go pretty deep. So those are just some interesting thoughts I thought I'd share with you about both the history of these kinds of dinner parties, but also some of the psychology behind dinner parties to help you maybe think about what are other ways in which when you have dinner parties, maybe especially around the holidays, you start engineering things gently, don't push things too much, so that people really have good, lively conversations with each other. They really do get to have positive interactions instead of one blowhard at the end of the table, sort of dominating everything or ruining it for everybody else, or whatever happens around your table, who knows. So those are just some thoughts I wanted to share with you. Thanks for watching and listening. I'm Justin Barrett. Like, subscribe. Let me know what other things you'd like me to talk about, questions, follow-ups that you might have. And enjoy that next dinner party.